Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. And it's always my pleasure and an honor to sit with you as we review the headlines. And thank you to everyone that is joining us, whether you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook or Rumble. Always got to remember that. And we're going to be continuing to add more ways to share with our brothers and sisters. But for now, that'll do. And we're certainly happy that you could join us tonight. And for those of you that are visiting with family and friends, we'll turn the volume up because we need to update everybody on what's going on right now and where we're headed, what things are coming our way. And for those that may be tuning in for the first time, well, we do these weekly news updates specifically because I had requested, I began to talk to folks about different things, and I would keep hearing, I've tuned out, I've disconnected, I don't watch the news anymore, which I completely understand because, after all, a lot of it is propaganda, much of it is manipulation. And so I certainly understand that. But complete disconnection means that you're unaware of things that are going on entirely. So we began to do weekly news updates so we could stay informed without being overwhelmed. Isn't that right, gang? That's what we do. We stay informed without being overwhelmed. And that way we're not in fear, because if you're getting updates every 15 minutes, you got to be kidding me, and you're getting all these different things, well, that's going to fray your nerves. But if you're completely disconnected, then you don't make good decisions. And so this is a balance that we've struck, and I'm very grateful for every one of you that take the time to sit with us as we look at the news from a biblical perspective. And for those of you that may not be aware, again, we'll share this with you. Again, we share every broadcast to encourage those that are tuning in for the first time to head on over to Remnant Watch. It's a website that we put together just for the things that we're going to discuss, and you'll find all the stories that we will discuss tonight, along with any stories that we've discussed in any previous broadcasts. And so that's always there as a ready reference. And based on the feedback that we've gotten so far anyway, everyone seems to be blessed by that. And so we're very thankful for it. And on that point, let's get to the news. Tonight, we're going to begin with a we actually had another lead story that we were going with until this story broke. And so it moved to front and center because it is actually quite pivotal and quite prophetic. As a matter of fact, since the late 1990s, those of us that have been aware of some of the prophetic words that were spoken in the 80s and the 90s concerning these two countries, well, we've never taken our eyes off of them ever since then. And we were given warning that this would come. And here we're seeing the evidence that those words were true, which is ominous because those prophetic words were ominous. And so here our lead story tonight is that Russia and China are on the brink of a military alliance that could overwhelm the United States of America. And that seems to be a major theme that is happening right now, is the attempt to overwhelm the United States and get out of, here it is, here's the story, I got to the wrong page, overwhelm the United States and, beat it in every front. We're going to be talking about that because, unfortunately, those of you that are watching this are watching more than just international intrigue concerning just nation states. You're also dealing with serious spiritual warfare, economic warfare, multi-layers of warfare that we're all figuring out as we go. So we like to take the 10,000 foot view so we can kind of read between the lines and understand what's really going on. And here we see, again, our lead story tonight. Russia and China are on the brink of a military alliance that could overwhelm the United States. For decades, the U.S. has been the world's main military superpower, but the U.S. faces formidable new threats and rising global conflict. In the wake of the Ukraine war, Russia and China have been growing closer. For decades, the military might of the U.S. was unchallenged. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, the U.S. was the world's only military superpower, with its forces deployed all over the world to defend allies and deter aggression. So, how many know that um, they created as much aggression as they deterred? Primarily, what that was done for was to protect the petrodollar. And so essentially, the military was used as a form of policing to keep the flow of the dollar going. And so this is not just a military conflict. This is a economic conflict, which many of you are very sharp. You've been picking up on that all along. You know that this is something that we've seen in the scripture, because we know that this all culminates with the ability to buy and sell. And if you cannot buy and sell in their system, obviously that is something we look at from the book of Revelation. And so we've been watching this economic scenario as well as the military reconfiguration. And based on, things that we know are coming, plus the prophetic words that we've been given, these pictures are ominous. And frankly, we need to be very careful as we go from here, because I believe that we have different types of enemies than we've ever had before. And we're going to look at that as we go. Um, and speaking of potential conflicts, and I've been hearing about this since 9/11, and I would caution all of you concerning some of these things, because we do need to be prepared for instantaneous change in our world, our global, positioning, if you will, our global status. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, where you are on earth, you can be, and you most likely will be affected if the superpowers go to war. And so here we're seeing, again, massive levels of pushback from countries that you would think wouldn't dare. I mean, they just wouldn't dare speak this way. Um, and basically, you're seeing a whole change in attitude internationally. Iran appears to strike a ship off the Indian coast with unmanned aerial vehicles, the U.S. official says. A strike comes as Houthi militants target multiple cargo ships on this past Shabbat as a group fired two anti-ship ballistic missiles into international shipping lanes located in the southern Red Sea, according to U.S. Central Command. So we're going to see this. This is part of what we're going to be taking a look at tonight, is the reality that the geopolitical landscape is changing. And with that change comes change to our world, the way that we function. So there are those forces that are trying to maintain the status quo, but the enormous amount of pressure on changing the status quo is pushing against that. And I believe it will give way. It's the old immovable object meets the unstoppable force thing going on. So, and both sides are taking it, hard. Both sides are suffering in this war. There are no real clear winners. And as a matter of fact, I think all of us are going to be affected as they try to manipulate one another to gain supremacy globally. So the good news is that if they think they need us to come along, then they, in the meantime, they may behave themselves. But woe to us all when one of them figures out how to win, right? Because that means they become the new superpower, or the old superpower reemerged, right? So we'll watch with great interest. And as a matter of fact, now concerns about World War III are going up even higher than they were before. World War III fears are skyrocketing as Putin threatens to expand the war to EU nations. Moldova and the Baltic nations, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania stand out as the most probable targets on Russia's strategic agenda. Now, there are those that want to continue to say that Russia's on some world dominating quest. I don't buy that. Russian President Vladimir Putin's ambiguous rhetoric concerning the expansion of Russia's conflict against Ukraine to other states is intensifying fears of a potential World War III outbreak. Well, there are those that would love there to be a World War III outbreak. They make money doing that. And frankly, it allows them to cover a bunch of things that they don't know quite how to cover. So again, we've been watching this rhetoric. We've been watching this same um, words being used, war of words being used, in an attempt to essentially prep us mentally for this state of just all out, war, and again, even with some of the bigger bombs, if you will. Well, a lot of that is just fear mongering. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't have time to go into every detail, but I can tell you right now, a lot of it is fear mongering, and it works. What they're really after is manipulating their own people. That is really what they're after. And what you're dealing with is a competition of mind control and who's going to win the day. And so we continue to see this, we continue to watch it. And as we do, we understand the geopolitical landscape is changing. There are those that don't want it to change. And that's why they've activated this war, because they don't want it to change. And we will win. We will win. We will beat the Putin. We will beat the Putin. Defiant Zelensky says Ukraine plans to mobilize 500,000 more soldiers. Where they got them, your guess is as good as mine. After difficult year, but vows to beat the Putin. And of course, President Zelensky has vowed that Ukraine will keep fighting and refuse to discuss any possibility of defeat. He's delusional. This is crazy talk, but nevertheless, this is what is being pushed, and there's a reason for it. And the more and more information that continues to come out from this theater of operations, the more questions we have about why this is even happening, much less why so much has been committed to this conflict. And what personally, I believe Russia's pulling its punches. But that may be about to change, and maybe that's why they're concerned there's going to be an all-out war. Well, again, I do believe there are different agendas on the earth that work. One thing's for sure, we're getting closer and closer to that day where the king says we will beat our swords into plowshares and we will learn war no more. How many can see that we're all as a species, all right, as humanity, we're getting real awful tired of this blow stuff up thing that they love to do. Okay. But nevertheless, we need to follow what's going on right now. And Russia's chief of general staff reports on Ukrainian failure. So somebody lying, why you always lying? Okay, because somebody ain't telling the truth here. According to the report, this year, the Russian military focused on repelling the Ukrainian counteroffensive, which planned to deprive Russia of the land corridor to Crimea. And according to Moscow, the Russian forces in the zone of the special military operation are engaged in active defense and constantly expand the zones of control in all directions. Kiev has failed the much-hyped counteroffensive despite a huge Western support, he added, and it is a standoff with U.S. and NATO. And so the hegemony of the United States and its allies is going to the past, but Washington wants to keep the Western-centric world order. Just as I said, somebody's trying to keep the status quo at any price. NATO annually holds close to 40 exercises at Russian borders, and all of them focus on fighting against Russia. What's interesting is they've spent so much time preparing to fight and aren't doing such a great job. So much for all those exercises, right? So much for all that planning and thinking, expecting to just run over your enemy. And I think that's true for both sides. I think the reality of war is never quite what you think it is, and many times these countries and militaries convince themselves of their supremacy, and then they go and they actually duke it out, and it isn't quite as one-sided as they'd like you to think it would be. And so again, Iran is now stepping into the theater of operations, and so this is going to get much more complicated. We just heard that this was last week. The U.S. announced, this was actually just after the last update, the U.S. announced a 10-nation coalition against the Houthis, which are attacking in the Red Sea. The United States on Monday announced a 10-nation coalition against Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, with Britain, France, Bahrain, and Italy among 10 countries joining the multinational security initiative, countries that seek to uphold the foundational principle of freedom of navigation. Okay, must come together to tackle the challenges posed by this non-state actor. And so again, why doesn't the U.S. just drop a bomb on them? Why not? Well, because I don't think the U.S. could win that war. And frankly, neither do some other military experts that I've heard give interviews in the last week. Taking on that front, along with all the other fronts that the United States has, not advisable. It really is not advisable. And again, the U.S. is defending itself abroad, right? While they're being attacked by $1,000 drones, but they got to spend $1 million to shoot it down. You guys do the math. You guys do the math. So this is going to get interesting here quick. Probably 2024 looks like it's setting up for major conflicts, is what it looks like to me. Barring an intervention, a divine intervention, we're going to see more conflict. As a matter of fact, U.S. troops were being warned on the 20th of an imminent attack, and of course those did start to materialize. The Houthi rebel leaders were warned of retaliatory efforts against American warships if the Yemeni group is targeted by the U.S. as part of a newly launched operation to counter attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. Did it work? Yes. As a matter of fact, we've got one of the stories on Remnant Watch is that major shipping lines no longer even go through the Red Sea because of this very issue. So this has gotten to the point where they're able to shut down shipping. And this is serious, folks. Is this going to affect the world? Absolutely. As it is, again, as I told you last week, it's very difficult to get things from one place to the other. We already have a problem with the Panama Canal, where ship captains or ship companies have to pay. They have to do a lottery. And then if they win the lottery, then they get the winning is they get to pay some enormous fee to go to the front of the line. This kind of stuff keeps happening. And the Houthis now launch more attacks on Red Sea as U.S. warships head to the region. So it's going to keep getting more and more. They're figuring out how to bring this thing into a conflict. And again, I do believe that there are forces that benefit from this. So, we have, again, South China Sea. We have Rocket Man over there shooting off rockets. We've got, Taiwan as a potential flashpoint. we now, of course, have, and we've had an ongoing flashpoint with Ukraine and its conflict with Russia, which we just read has the potential to expand beyond those borders. Then you add the Middle East. You've got the conflict going on between Israel and Gaza, which is, of course, threatening to turn the entire region into a conflict zone. Okay, so we've got, that's quite a few conflicts, and there are other enemies. See, when you've been king of the mountain for a while, well, you develop enemies you didn't even know were there. So this is a very, very dangerous time. And you guys remember last week I mentioned this story. I mentioned that we're going to watch this area down here, and sure enough, change is occurring here, and this is going to slowly walk up as well. The UK is to divert warships to Guyana. So this is just south of the United States, right? So this is just in South America. The UK to divert warships to Guyana as tensions flare with Venezuela. Britain said Sunday it will divert a Royal Navy warship to waters off Guyana after a long simmering territorial dispute between South American ally and Venezuela recently flared again. And so, without getting into further detail, basically what they're doing is they're going to put a boat on a pirate station. Now, when I was in the military in 1984, we were on a Westpac. We were 50 miles off the coast of Iran, part of a battle group. That's what, it is. You have a main carrier, and then you have, other boats that are part of that battle group. And it's just standard procedure. And what they did with our boat, I was on a destroyer, and they put us out first, or in other words, way out in front. And our job was, we were basically a tripwire. We were 50 miles off the coast of Iran. Can you imagine me with a flak jacket on, a helmet, G.I. Joe helmet, standing in front of a 50 caliber machine gun, being told that anything comes over that horizon, you take it out. Right then you're thinking, wait a minute, I joined the Navy, not the Army, right? Wait, what happened here? How'd I end up here? How'd I end up behind this machine gun? Wait a second. I'm a missile tech. I'm supposed to shoot things out of the sky. Well, that's the deal. So when they put that boat out there, it's a tripwire. You hit this boat, now you started a war. But the guys on that boat, they're not so thrilled about that. You're the bait. That's basically what it looks like to me, is they put this boat out there as a bait. I dare you, touch this boat and see what happens, that kind of thing. Right? So it's kind of like them letting them know, look, we're not going to bring our whole fleet down there, but we will. You touch this boat and we will launch our fleet, right? So this is them stretching their resources, guys, and trying to plug holes in the dam. What do you think suppose starts happening when other countries start saying, well, wait a second, we're going to get in this thing, right? And so that could get real ugly real quick. And it is a dangerous, dangerous time. Thank you for your service. I love veterans. I really appreciate all of you who I appreciate everybody, but I especially appreciate those courageous enough to go and defend their country. I mean, you just can't take anything away from those people. And China is not doing well, as we talked about. Economically, they're struggling. But how many have noticed, and just to take a moment here, because I know you guys pay attention. I mean, you don't just wait on me to give you some things. We look at these things together. But how many things have we seen hit China this year? I mean, we have seen record flooding. Do you guys remember that? Record flooding, okay? And massive, massive levels of disruption of their norm. Then we saw some of the typhoon damage that came in. Remember that? And I remember we were asking the question, and again, just thinking outside the box a little bit. Boy, it almost seems like China is getting hammered. Like, oh, you're not going to play ball, or you're not gonna participate in what we're trying to do. Oh, you want to be our enemy after we spent all this money on you, and it's kind of like this feeling is there, right? Like, well, then you see things like this, and again, boy, not a great year for China. Biggest blizzard ever recorded along China's coast. Biggest one ever. I mean, talk about a bad year. China's Shandong Peninsula is experiencing severe snowstorms, with Yantai and Weiding setting new historic highs for snow depth amidst a severe cold wave affecting parts of the country. Can you say weather war? I don't know. This extreme weather event is part of a broader cold wave sweeping across China. Northern regions are experiencing temperatures near historic lows, impacting transportation and even causing mechanical issues such as brake failure on Beijing commuter trains. The southern province of Guangdong usually experiences milder winters, witness rare snowfall. Hello. Okay. To me, I'm suspicious of this kind of stuff, because I know you guys are too. Like, wait, there's too many coincidences start making us wonder, like, things that make you go, right? And so there's a lot of things that make you go like that. There's a lot of things that make you wonder, hey, is something going on here somebody's not telling us about, right? And speaking of China, did you guys hear about the earthquake that slammed into China? It was like 6.2, I believe. And here I've got a video on it. I'm gonna see if I can play it real quick here. Let me get it up here. Let me try to keep the volume from being too high. Check this out. These are the birds that are reacting to the atmospheric change that happens when there's about
remote and mountainous county nestled on the northern fringes of
from
the
the actual
plateau,
earthquake itself.
6.2 earthquake
And again, this was a 6.2,
residents noticed large
and I believe they lost something like 70, 80 people. So it was definitely a very serious
event, which occurred at
problem.
11:59 p.m. local time
I'll let you
on
just
Monday,
take a look at that for
December
a moment.
18th, struck with its epicenter located in Zhejiang County, within the northwestern province of Gansu, China. According to the China Earthquake Network Center, the quake originated at a depth of 10
And
kilometers, sending shockwaves
um,
across the
they're
rugged
still
landscape.
experiencing aftershocks, so it's not over yet by a long shot. I believe they've lost over 140 people were killed, and a couple of people are still
The
missing
epicenter was positioned
as a
just
result
5
of this.
kilometers from the border between Gansu and a neighboring province, and the reverberations were felt strongly in
So
many
you
parts
have
of
an
Henan
earthquake
province, as
plus you
reported
have
by the official
world like
Xinhua
record
news
setting
agency.
blizzard conditions. Um, it looks to me like China is under a different type of attack.
The timing of
Yeah,
the
we see.
earthquake,
I mean,
combined
these
with the
guys all of a sudden
challenging
watch. They'll just
sub-zero
start bolting out of
temperatures
the building
sweeping through most of China due to a persistent cold wave, has
because,
posed
hey,
significant hurdles for the
you
local
never know with
industries.
these things, with these earthquakes, things start coming down. And again, like I said, China is their earthquake death toll has risen to over 149. There's 2 missing after a week. And one of China's most powerful earthquakes in recent years killed at least 149 people. It was a 6.2. Now, guys, I want to remind you they changed the field here. So when we were younger, for those of you that are like around my age, we didn't use this scale. So probably would have been like a 7.5, just to give you an idea. The epicenter of the quake straddled the provinces of Gansu and Qinghai, in an area where many of Chinese Hui people live, a tight-knit ethnic minority characterized as with a Muslim identity, actually. So that's kind of interesting. So 200,000 homes were wrecked. Wow, 200,000. Guys, remember Turkey? Who remembers Turkey? Yeah, we didn't forget. More than 200,000 homes were wrecked. 100 or 15,000 were on the brink of collapse, and Chinese state media said. So, and China already has like a real estate problem. So this is really interesting. We're watching this with interest, and I feel for these people because again, we're all caught in the crossfire of whatever this thing is, whatever this conflict is, this invisible war, right? We're all in the middle of it. I don't think there's anybody that isn't affected in some way by these changes that are happening right now. And so, you know, the believers in China, boy, we got to pray for the remnant in China. I tell you, they got to be battling big time. And as these things change, right? So what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing economically, as I've been warning all year long, and it just continues to roll on down the road. This BRICS thing is not going away, folks. It's not going to just disappear, no matter what any other countries do. These guys are serious about the replacement of the US dollar as the default trading currency. And right now, the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and China to increase trade in local currencies. Once again, this is one of the things that these are the real earthquakes that are going on. Following its accepted invitation to join the BRICS, United Arab Emirates is reportedly seeking increased trade with China to become a global player. Specifically, both nations are poised to expand their cooperation through bilateral investments and cooperation to grow their presence in the Pacific Islands and in Africa. Okay, and so we pointed out how that Africa was being kind of wooed by BRICS to participate with them, and these folks are a raw material producers, and a lot of our goods come from this part of the world. Many things come from China or India. So, if you're a country that's already spending, $20 billion on Chinese goods anyway, well, then you may as well figure out, and they may give you a better deal if you're buying, if you're going through BRICS, which I'm sure they're incentivizing these countries to do that, right? So there's no benefit there, or there's huge benefit to this. There's not a lot of benefit to staying with the old system. Take a look at the results. I mean, the numbers don't lie, right? What would we as the United States love to see? A 5.7 economic growth for the year, 5.7%. If our economy were cooking at a growth rate of 5.7%, there wouldn't be a single unemployed person out there. UAE forecast, this is a result of their joining together with these guys. So this is a huge selling point to other countries. Can you see where this is going? In a new look at the country's financial outlook, the United Arab Emirates is forecast to experience a 5.7% growth after joining BRICS. Talk about an endorsement. Indeed, the nation's economy is expected to see rapid growth through 2024. So while some countries are suffering some of the worst economic situations ever, you got other countries, because they aren't on that side, right? They aren't on, the other program. Um, there's benefiting. So right now in the same earth, you got countries with huge upsides and huge economic growth for the year coming in, and you got the West, which is spending to go to war, and there's no economic growth going on. Well, there's a little bit of growth, but it's not what we would love to see, right? So if it's an economic war, if that's the competition, the West is getting beat up. Let's just say, okay. I mean, take a look at this. Here's another indicator of it. And again, we watch this because this is part of the war, right? So we're not fooled by it. It's not all bullets and guns. No, sir. And look at this. BRICS is again, that's I'm sorry. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America are the main countries that make up BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South America. Russia and India settle 40 billion in trade in local currencies. They take rupees, you take rubles, everybody's happy. Wait, you don't need dollars? Nope. Don't need dollars. Okay? So that they're going around the dollar. What do you think that does to the value of the dollar? This is what the real war is about. This has always been what the real war is about. And it is continuing. Again, I only point these things out so that you're fully aware. So you're not standing around like a lot of people are, completely oblivious to the things coming at you full speed. Basically, a lot of the country is bracing. They're bracing for the impact of this, which is why you're seeing all these banks closing down and closing and firing employees. What we've seen, 50, 60,000 employees in the banking sector have lost their jobs. As 2023 comes to a close, the U.S. economy has started its long road of recovery. Ain't no 5.7% for these boys. With interest rate hikes finally slowing, the Fed has remained optimistic, very positive, very positive. The interest rates will see cuts next year as inflation of the U.S. dollar slows despite ongoing threats from BRICS. With BRICS bloc growing as well as its mission for de-dollarization, a major U.S. bank is predicting the future of the U.S. dollar. And of course, well, there you go. I mean, I think that picture probably paints the right. This is without any of these other countries, right? They love to blame these other countries. Like, you want to blame BRICS? BRICS didn't even exist when they had already robbed about 95% of the buying power of the US dollar. So how do you blame these guys for that? The erosion of your buying power. It's ridiculous. It's utterly insane to think that they're the reason for it. No, they're the response to it. They're the response to the constant devaluation. Can you imagine them? They're spending billions of dollars on treasuries. And even when they do get paid, the dollars that they got, okay, after the 10 years or 5-year wait, aren't even worth what they originally invested. So whatever interest they gained, they lose just by the value of the dollar itself being devalued across the world. It's a game they're all done playing. That's why they continue to dump their treasuries. And how's that affecting us domestically, right? How is that affecting the average guy on the ground? Are they seeing increase? No. As a matter of fact, the curse is manifesting in the West. 62% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and the bottom of the economic food chain is already collapsing. Okay. And we're talking about people that are what were considered to be middle class, fairly well off, wealthy. Thanks to a soaring stock market, the wealthy are feeling very good about things because they're continuing to get wealthier. But 62% of adults in December said they lived paycheck to paycheck, up from 58% in March. 40% of consumers living paycheck to paycheck have super prime credit scores. And so, what you're basically seeing is that the West is being pummeled. I think that one of the things that they saw is the status of the Western nations was too high, so they wanted to bring that down, the living standards, if you will, because people begin to expect more and more and more, and the more they expect, well, the more pressure they're putting on government and businesses and corporations and companies that service them. It used to be we were so grateful just to be able to return something. Nowadays, you go stand in a return line and you're going to see a different attitude. How many know what I'm talking about? The level of entitlement has gone beyond words, and you've all seen it, and you've all seen how it impacts our world. And so here we are. And again, as I said, I mentioned this earlier, and this does affect us economically. This is why I ended up in this portion of the report. The major shipping giant is halting the Red Sea route following the Houthi attacks. So while this looks like military type stuff or things concerning that war, it's really economic. Over the weekend, 4 of the world's largest shipping companies halted operations in the Red Sea amid ongoing vessel attacks by Yemen's Iran Houthis. So they cut off shipping. What does that do? That means these all have to do different routing. This doesn't mean they can't still get you the goods if you're in that area, what have you. It just means you have to use different methods. That's a big deal because these boats, as you can see, carry a tremendous amount of goods from port to port. So to have that completely disconnected, they know what they're doing. They're going to event this a siege, and essentially by cutting off supply, they can, you know, they can affect their enemy. And isn't that exactly what we see Israel doing to Gaza? There are stories. There was one story I don't even want to talk about, but they basically just said, we're cutting off everything. Everything. Well, that doesn't make you look good. The whole world is looking and watching. And again, we don't take sides in these conflicts because both sides are off and they've got evil on both sides. So it's like picking between demons. But nevertheless, we do have compassion for the innocent victims that are stuck in between the crossfire of these things. And speaking of crossfire, what in the world happened here? So again, manifestations of demonic activity increasing completely off the rails. Something, we keep seeing these kinds of things. People are cracking. They're cracking under pressure. They're cracking in weird, strange ways. The demons are manifesting in very violent ways. Gunman opens fire in a Prague university, killing 14 people in the Czech Republic's worst mass shooting. So we're seeing a lot of firsts, never happened before kind of things. A student opened fire Thursday at a university in Prague, killing at least 14 people, officials said, and injuring more than 20 in the Czech Republic's worst mass shooting. What does this do? Where was this predicted? Well, he told us because of the iniquity that would abound, the love of many would wax cold. How hateful do you have to be to just open fire on innocent people? The bloodshed took place at the philosophy department building of Charles University, where the shooter was a student. Prague Police Chief Martin Vondrasak said the gunman also died. Authorities said his name has not been released. So, you've got the victim of the actual perpetrator, which again, a devil was involved. Nobody does this who is not filled with a demon. Nobody has that kind of bloodlust. It's a blood sacrifice. That's what that was. It was a blood sacrifice. And that man was filled with demons. And that's how desperate this war is getting. And you also have to bear in mind that while the rest of the world is watching plastic screens and ignoring reality, These demons know their time is almost up. And so we were warned in the scripture, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down with great wrath, knowing he hath but a short time. So we're watching this dramatic increase of wickedness. And this is why I believe we need to be wise in this hour. So this move here, we talked about this last week, but it bears repeating. This was finally signed into law. Governor Abbott of Texas got some sense and signs a bill that lets police arrest migrants who enter the U.S. illegally. Duh. I can't believe it took them this long. Brownsville, Texas, a Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott on Monday approved sweeping new powers that allow police to arrest migrants who illegally cross the U.S. border and give local judges authority to order them to leave the country, testing the limits of how far a state can go to enforce immigration law. Well, again, there's an absence of immigration law. That's the problem here. And even when they break the law, there are politicians that'll say they've done nothing wrong. So this has got to bring, there has to be some sanity to this. Not to say that you shouldn't be compassionate to the stranger, but I'm pretty sure we all want, even if we have a visitor we weren't expecting, we still expect them to use the door, not climb in through the bathroom window, right? So there's proper and improper. Anybody that doesn't come through the door, according to the scriptures, a thief and a robber. So they should come through the door. Now, the problem that this country has is it's out there protecting other people's borders and forgot about its own. Oh, different kettle of fish. And in the Palestinian conflict, I'm not going to go much into this week. We talk about that a lot. And so we will pick this up again next week. There was a failed attempt by Egypt to try to bring peace into the situation. I think we're seeing an intentional war. Even the UN General Assembly overwhelmingly passed a resolution urging a ceasefire in Israel's war on Gaza, but that didn't matter. Okay, so it doesn't matter if all the countries sign an agreement; they're going to go on anyway. Tells you there's an agenda. They're not really looking for peace. They're looking to do something specific in that region, and I believe that it's going to continue to accelerate. It is not going away. Every indication that we see indicates to us that it's going to continue to be a conflict for some time until there is no more Gaza. That seems to be the play. So we'll watch and see. And again, one of the big challenges, one of the biggest things that we're seeing is the change of the dimensions of the war. And not just here, but anywhere. They're changing the whole landscape of war itself. Take a look at this. They're bringing in AI, and we knew this. We watched this. We knew that this was coming, but it's coming fast, folks. And AI is really unreliable. Okay? I've been running tests on ChatGPT, on various AI platforms for other reasons. Highly unreliable, highly unpredictable, and certainly not something you should be relying on for your defense for a lot of things. But they're going there. Look at this. World War III warning as super AI weapons to enter warfare by end of the decade. And so, they're planning on this. It recently emerged that Israeli Defense Forces are actively using AI systems named Habsora to identify targets in their conflict with Hamas in Gaza. Commenting on the situation in Gaza and broader realm of warfare, political socialist Bianca Bargiani warned that military forces already employ remote and autonomous systems as force multipliers to amplify effectiveness of their troops and safeguard their soldiers. Now, there are some applications where that does make some sense because it can give you good intelligence. But when they start to put these or talk about putting that AI into a soldier or a piece of equipment that has deadly capability, look out, folks. We just moved into Terminator. We just moved into Judgment Day. right? The machines have come alive. Isn't that the very theme of the whole Matrix movie? I mean, it's just crazy what we're seeing here. Just the machines themselves sort of taking over the whole situation, the whole war. So now what are we going to watch? Remote control wars? And then to some degree, we're already seeing that. I mean, what are we talking about with these Houthis, except that they're shooting drones, which when did that become right? So that became that's the new method. Well, that negates a lot of the higher end equipment. So it brings warfare down to a level of affordability. Can't imagine who would want to profit from that. Can't imagine who would be interested in that. My goodness. And so this is where we are, folks. And in an attempt to control the boat, I know many of you may be aware of this, so this is kind of interesting, but it speaks to the domestic situation. So again, you got the BRICS over here that are flying high, 5.7% growth rates. Man, they're looking forward to their next year. And here we've got crazy going on locally. Colorado Supreme Court justices face a flood of threats after disqualifying Trump from the ballot. And in the latest round of threats fits a familiar pattern. And Trump faces a legal setback and official face threats. Dun, dun, dun. And so they're trying to paint the picture like Trump's this terrorist. And I mean, I'm not on either side, but some of this is laughable. In the past 24 hours, since the Colorado Supreme Court kicked former President Donald Trump off the state's Republican primary ballot, social media outlets have been flooded with threats against the justices. Well, rumor has it that one of them's already at Gitmo. Of course, we can't verify that rumor, but that's the rumor. That this attempt will fail. I'm not really sure how they're using the whole January 6th thing, since he's not been convicted of anything. So it seems to me like this was politically motivated and not really based in law, which means it probably doesn't last. But it makes for good news and it makes for good theater. So, they're going to keep going with it. But nevertheless, I do believe you're going to see a landslide if there is an election, if we even get that far. So who knows? 2024 may be so nasty we don't have any of that here in the West. And what was the United States of America just isn't anymore. Something else will take its place. The land will still be here, right? The air will still be here, the sky above us, but what will this be called? Well, I guess we're going to find out. Okay, because the moral degradation is really the issue more than anything else. And that's what's collapsing, is their thought process, their mental construct of what is the West, what is the nation, what is it made of. All these things are being challenged now, folks. And this is something that goes to the very heart of who we are. Do we believe in being kind to our neighbor or not? Do you believe in the basics, the things that were passed down to us from our Creator? Or are you constantly trying to rewrite the rules, which is what the West is guilty of? We know that. It's been trying to impose a social order and a social construct on the minds of the world, and the world's saying, you can keep that. Okay? You can keep that. We don't want anything to do with it. And not only is the world waking up, but so are the average citizens on the ground as they're seeing these stars fall from the heavens as predicted in Matthew chapter 24, that we would see the stars fall from the heavens. So who thinks it's coincidental that we're seeing accusations like this hitting ministries? And of course, TD Jakes is coming under huge fire right now. And days after denouncing an unverified report. Okay. Well, I bet you anything we're going to see verification here before too long. Unverified report casting innuendo about his sexuality and accusing him of being a frequent participator at sex parties hosted by producer and music mogul Sean Combs, popularly known as Diddy. Televangelist TD Jakes calls his accusers liars on Sunday and noted that even if everything was true, all I got to do is repent sincerely from my heart. Do you hear that? Do you guys hear that? You know what I hear? Want to know what I hear? Been at this a while. I hear a guilty conscience. That's what I hear. I hear a guilty conscience. Somebody saying, well, even if I were guilty, even if I were guilty, okay, then, I wouldn't have to worry about it. All I have to do is, wait a second. Even if you're guilty, people tend to slip if you pay attention, okay? And so, recent claims circulating a pocket of social media about Bishop T.D. Jakes. Wow. The things that pass, okay, are unequivocally false and baseless. No, what's false and baseless is mostly what this man preaches, but that's a whole different discussion. And so, frankly, I think it's interesting that we're seeing the collapse of these stars, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that. You're going to see a lot of pastors coming under judgment very, very quickly here. I can tell you that for a fact. There's going to be a number of ministers and ministries that now come under hyper examination. And remember, he told them, he warned them, be not many teachers, for you will incur the stricter judgment. And how many know that that's exactly what's coming down? Now, I want to take a moment to share something with you guys in this realm. That's why I leave that story kind of for last. And in 1999, I not only got that word that I traveled the country to deliver, but I also was given a vision of pastors being dragged out of their homes by their own congregations, and some were beaten to death for lying. So when I see these things, I kind of have a little one of those moments where I'm like, are we there? Are we about there? Because as people figure out that they've been had for mammon, their reaction is going to be extreme. Okay. And I saw this again. I just saw it. I can't say what it was that I can't tell you when it was or where it was. All I can tell you is I saw pastors being dragged out and trying to calm their own people. It wasn't strangers. It was their own people who had it and took it out on them. So was it prophetic? Was it just anticipating what might happen? I don't know, but it was very, very real. And so when I see these kinds of things, I can imagine we're getting closer to that moment when people are saying, I've had about enough of being lied to. And so many are waking up and asking hard questions. And what they're really asking is, how long have you known this? How long have you known what I just found out? How long can you, and these know-it-alls are going to say, oh, well, I've known that. Well, that's going to be bad. That's going to be bad. Okay, because there's people that use them and relied on them to counter arguments and debate with others. And then they're going to find out the whole time they knew they were lying. Yeah. So I can't say, what will happen and where it'll happen, all that stuff, because I just saw what I saw. But it makes me nervous when I see this kind of stuff because, again, how many use this bishop as their template for their ministry? How many ministries are trying to copy exactly? And they've been coming under this spirit the whole time. Welcome to the last days, folks. And in our last story for the night, apparently Michigan is getting ready for some conflict because even the sheriff's department is teaching people about militias. Michigan. Okay. Michigan Sheriff Darleaf offers militia courses. This just came out. Special offer militia course. Learn a militiaman's duty. And the Michigan Sheriff Darleaf is offering a militia course to residents, according to a Friday Facebook post. The constitutionalist sheriff posted a graphic for enrollment to learn militiamen's duty for potential jurors, homeschoolers, ladies and gentlemen. Did I read that right? Potential jurors, homeschoolers, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. Okay. And so, literally, there it is. There's the post. This post shared a few other details, but included an email associated with the website of Brent Allen Winters and Terry Hata, an Indiana attorney. The course was undoubtedly in response to a myriad of gun controls the Michigan legislature passed and Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed in 2023, which included restricting gun rights for individuals convicted of several types of nonviolent misdemeanors. And so, uh, basically, in November, the Holton Township Board of Trustees adopted a resolution declaring the township a Second Amendment sanctuary, as well as adopting an addendum establishing a township militia. Militia, okay? Which, by the way, is the constitutional right of the United States of America. If you are part of the U.S. Republic, well, then, you can join a militia. That was how this country was founded. And what's interesting here is it's being run by a sheriff, not by some bunch of outlaws or patriots, right? No, sheriff department. That was a new level, something new going on here. Okay, and what do they know that you don't know, right? And so again, these conflicts against the sovereignty of the people continue to rise. I'm a student of history, and I haven't found a government yet in 6,000 years. There's not a single government that I've ever looked at. And if you're a student of history with me, well, then if you can tell me one exception, I'd love to hear it. But there's not one government that doesn't eventually end up turning on its own people. And so those that are starting to figure out that we're getting awful close to that exact moment when the very ones that we the people employed, start thinking that they are the masters instead of the people who employed them. When that starts to happen, how many know that there needs to be the masters have to reassert themselves and say, excuse me, but we hired you. Right. And so until that comes back into the psyche of the citizenry, this is what you're going to see this stoke up, folks. You're going to see this stoke up. So here we go. 2024 looks to me like it's going to be a year of great conflict. And there should, based on what I'm sensing by the Ruach, is there's going to be a lot of loss of life. And so all the more important reason for everyone to be in their place, wherever they belong, wherever you've been given a place. After all, he sets the members in the body as it pleases him. One thing we cannot do is try to force people over that line. One of the things I want to encourage all of you to do is just allow people to find their own place instead of trying to force that. There's a revelation that comes only by the Ruach, and one man's revelation should never become another man's regulation. So we need to be respectful, but we also need to recognize sovereign Elohim's will. He picks whom he picks. He chooses whom he chooses. He has mercy upon whom he will have mercy, and he has compassion upon whom he will have compassion. That is on him. And we don't get to choose. And that's why he says, by Messiah, he said, two shall be in the field, one will be taken, the other left, two in the bed, one taken, the other left. That is how close people can be. And it doesn't mean that they're both going to get delivered. And this is very dangerous. So we need to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Pray for everybody, love everybody, and by all means, be kind one to another. Be ye kind one to another. Ephesians 4:32. You know how I learned that? We used to sing that with the kids. Be ye kind one to another. Be ye kind one to another. That's how we learned it. Ephesians 4:32. Trying to teach the children just to be kind, right? And we as adults, we need to sing that song. Let's be kind one to another. Just because you have discovered truth and are standing in it doesn't mean you lose kindness because of it. Okay, you could be John the Baptist radical, still be kind. Doesn't mean you have to compromise what you believe and where you stand and how you walk. You're in a world full of a lot of confused people, and it's your kindness that will lead them to repentance. There's a song to that, It's your kindness that leads us to repentance, oh yeah. Knowing that you love us no matter what we do makes us want to love you more. We do need to love him through kindness to our brother and sister. And remember that, but for the grace of Elohim, well, we'd all be in these ditches and confused about what's coming. So encourage one another. Be kind one to another. There's going to be a lot of hate in the world. They've got plenty of hate and plenty of anger, and they hate you for his name's sake as it is. Don't add to that. Just go ahead out there and be kind, be loving, bless them. They need you. They really, really do. Well, that's this week's report. I'm grateful for every one of you. Thank you for those of you that prayed for me when I had to cut one short. But I'm 100% and feeling great. Thank you so much for joining us. I pray this report's been a blessing to you. Join us again next week at this exact time. We're always here, Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube, to share our review and from a biblical perspective. Thanks again for joining us. Good night.